And joining us today in our Book Talk segment, great to welcome a woman who's written a very fascinating book. We all kind of went through this about, 8 years ago now when Hurricane Katrina came through, particularly down here in Florida. We know about it, but they knew more about it, obviously, in New Orleans and Louisiana. It's called 5 Days at Memorial, Life and Death in a Storm-Ravaged Hospital. We're joined today by Pulitzer Prize-winning author and journalist Sheri Fink on the telephone. And Sheri, good to have a chance to chat with you. How are you today?
Hi, very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to have a chance to read through the book a bit. And as I said, down here in Florida, we kind of expected to get more of that storm when that happened, but obviously New Orleans got the brunt of it. Were you there during the storm itself or just afterward?
I was there after. I was working with a public health team at the time, and but yes, I think you in Florida, if anywhere in the country, know what the stakes are in these types of hurricanes and just how important that those hospitals can be and how vulnerable in these situations.
I know we had another story even previous to that in previous years that was definitely going to hit us in the Tampa Bay, Sarasota area. Just kind of made a right turn at the last minute and hit south of us, but just the damage. I mean, obviously everybody knows what it can do, but like you mentioned, the hospitals and the healthcare people, the first responders, all that, those people do incredible work when these things happen. But your story is what makes it kind of fascinating is what happened at this hospital. Which, talk a little bit about how you got involved with the story to begin with.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people might remember that after the storm, there were allegations flying around that doctors and nurses may have intentionally hastened the deaths of their patients. And that's where I started hearing about this, too, in the news. And it just, I had done disaster aid work myself as a first responder and also had reported on a lot of crises, and I'd never heard of allegations like that coming out outside of the realm of fiction. And it seems like we really needed to learn about what really happened there before the next disaster happened, because, like you mentioned, it's not just New Orleans, it's Florida, it's New York, where I'm sitting right now. We have the possibility at any point during hurricane season that we could be faced with this. And so I wanted to look at what really did happen and what can we learn from it. And it turned out to be this fascinating story of, really human nature under crisis situations. And there's just so much to learn from it for anyone who, obviously people who work in the medical sector, but also any of us who could need to rely on a hospital for ourselves or for our loved ones in a situation, in the midst of an emergency.
That's a scary thing. You mentioned, I've seen stories on some of the crime shows where they do a plot line where maybe a rogue doctor, does these kind of things, and you say, I hope that doesn't happen in real life, but in this case it did, right? Where the doctors went a little bit haywire.
Things went topsy-turvy, and in fact, there was an episode of, was that legal drama, Boston Legal, where they kind of dramatized the second half of 5 Days at Memorial is really a kind of a legal thriller in a way, but it's a true story. So the first half of 5 Days Memorial, you're walking through from the perspectives of different doctors, nurses, patients. You're confronting the ethical dilemmas. Who do you save first when suddenly all power is about to go out in your hospital? You've got 240 patients. You've got helicopters coming very slowly. They can take one or two people at a time. So that, that ethical dilemma, which is really a question of values more than medicine, about do we save the youngest, the oldest, et cetera? So you're kind of walking through, but the second half is about, these allegations arise that in these desperate circumstances, some health professionals may have resorted to acts that in normal times we would never consider in any way acceptable. And so how does our justice system deal with actions like this, but in the context of a severe disaster? And so that whole question of the investigator setting out to see what really happened, finding out that possibly 20 patients had been injected with powerful drugs and had died, and feeling very passionate about seeking justice when there was really a code of silence amongst these health professionals not to talk about what happened after it happened. And so it's really kind of a suspenseful, search into into what really happened, and then how do we decide whether there should be some measure of justice in this case. So that's what the book 5 Days at Memorial is really about.
Yeah, when you decide to do an investigative piece on this story, Sheri, how do you kind of, you mentioned the code of silence and all that, how do you kind of approach it to start? Who do you talk with first off to get the information? If you can kind of give a little background how you did that.
Yeah, sure. It was a bit hard at first because a lot of people didn't want to talk about it, but I think that's what investigative journalism is about, and in a way, I mean, it's really fascinating to try to peel back what happened little by little, and you just kind of start to accumulate things. You talk to one person who leads you to another person, you get this document and that document, and you start to triangulate evidence, I guess it might be the best way to put it. And I was trained as a physician and also as a researcher, and it's really those same skills of, trying to deduce what the truth is from various pieces of evidence. And it's a challenge, but it's also very interesting to do that, and especially when you feel like a story like this is so important and has so many, hopefully, lessons for all of us to take from it.
There's always somebody that is willing to talk, I guess, that maybe they feel a little nervous about it, but I guess if you do it in a way, they'll give you the information, right? I mean, there is always somebody that's willing to tell the truth. But you just got to search for it.
And over time, too, like, when the doctor and two nurses were arrested and their fates were not known, a lot of people were afraid to talk after what happened with them was settled, then some more people opened up. So, yeah, it's a question of, and then there were people who wanted to talk from the very beginning, the family members of the people who died, for example, who had no answers. They had no explanations for years, and they really wanted to talk about the value of their loved ones' lives, who, did have value. These weren't just numbers. To them, these were real, their loved ones, and any of us could relate to that. So very early on, a number of people did want to speak, and even doctors and nurses in the hospital who really wanted to defend the incredible hard work and heroic work that went on to try to save lives in a horrible disaster where the government didn't come quickly enough, and the hospital corporation didn't come quickly enough, and people were really left, as we often are in disasters. That's what you learn from 5 Days at Memorial, is that you can't just wait for help to come. You have to be creative and proactive, and it's something we can all learn about, how to be better prepared so that we and our families and the people around us have a better chance of surviving and being resilient in a crisis.
Yeah. Well, if the story wasn't true, I mean, it's a thriller no matter what, but you hate to think that this actually happened, but it did. But it's a great story nonetheless for people to read through.
It is about, I have to say, 6.5 years I've looked at this story, and I'm still fascinated by it, and I'm still finding out new things.
Called 5 Days at Memorial, Life and Death in a Storm-Ravaged Hospital. We've been talking with Sheri Fink today. Sheri, I know the book just came out, doing very well, but give a website, either yours or where people can get the book.
Sure. I think just going into your search engine and putting 5 Days at Memorial in quotes, you'll pull up the Amazon page, the Barnes & Noble page, or go to your local bookstore. You can find it there if you're interested in knowing more. I have a website. It's sherifink.net. SHERIFINK.net, and there's more information there, too.
Great. Sheri, pleasure to talk to you. Great job on this. We need more investigative journalists. I get the feeling, at least on television, that's kind of gone away, but at least in the print media, I think it's still going well, and keep it up.
Thank you so much. Keep up what you do, too.